Every neighborhood has a heartbeat, a place that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core. In Boston's historic North End, that place is Boston Barber and Tattoo Company. Boston Barber and Tattoo Company has become home to A-list Boston celebrities like Gordon Hayward, Milan Lucic, Brad Marchand, and Aaron Baines. Boston Barber and Tattoo is more than just Boston's most well-known corner barbershop. It's also a tourist attraction for the hundreds and thousands of people that visit the North End throughout the year. Boston Barber and Tattoo, a North End landmark that represents the cultural epicenter of the area at its core, located at 113 Salem Street.
Jeff Goodman here with the Good and Plenty podcast. Thanks for joining us for another edition, NBA edition every Tuesday, college edition every Thursday. Be sure to subscribe. Stitcher, iTunes, CLNS Media. You can find me at Goodman Hoops. You can also find me at WatchStadium.com. This show brought to you by Stamps.com. For a 4-week trial postage and a digital scale, go to Stamps.com, click the microphone on the top of the page, and enter my promo code GNP. This week's edition, we've got one of the top writers in the country. We've got Sam Amick, formerly USA Today. He's now with The Athletic, and he'll talk about how he was there for the Rondo, Chris Paul spat, and plenty more. New Orleans, Denver, who you taking out of those two? How good is Kawhi Leonard? Is he better than Giannis? We'll talk about all that with Sam up next. Now pleased to welcome in formerly of the USA Today and now of The Athletic. And first of all, congratulations, Sam Amick. How you doing? You good?
I'm good, Jeff. Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it. Just, you know how it is when you transition, and, well, you really do know how it is when you transition. And
I do.
Getting comfortable, getting a rhythm, but it's been fun so far.
Yeah, right before the start of the season, so that's good. And still living in the Bay Area, so you're still kind of a West Coast guy, and I know you were at the big game. I mean, there's been some fun things already in the NBA season. It's been a week old or even less than that, and we had some fireworks. And two of my favorite people, and I'm saying that sarcastically, Rondo and Chris Paul. I don't really get along with either one of them. How about that?
Well, we got to dive down that rabbit hole. I need to know the backstories. I mean, I can guess they're both edgy. They're both very opinionated when it comes to everything. But but if I'm going to guess, in your case, I mean, they have a media perspective that they share on occasion. So I'm with you. I mean, it was crazy, man. I just came down to LA for LeBron's opener, thinking that we're going to sit there and chronicle the beginning of that era. And, for a lot of the night, you had everything that comes with it. You had the celebs, you had LeBron saturation all over Staples Center, billboards, commercials, and it was going down that road. And next thing you know, this thing pops off. But it was pretty wild.
All right, so your lead was going to be what? Before that happened, what was your – I know you had your lead written. What was it? And then –
You're making my day, Jeff. Here's the thing, because I kind of wanted somebody to ask me this at some point, because it was going to be a good one if I could pull off the little interview conversation that I was going to try to get. So I'm watching this game, and honestly, one of the fun parts about, not to sound like a commercial, but about The Athletic is that writing wise, I can get back to it's kind of a blank canvas. So creativity wise, yeah, in your lead. Because of that is going to maybe be, a little more creative than it might have been before. So Rondo had, before the game, had actually told Doris Burke, she kind of just asked him about what it's like to play with LeBron. And he said, listen, I didn't grow up when the Beatles were big, but it feels like the closest thing to that, playing with a guy who's part of the Beatles. And so I'm watching the game, and I happen to notice Jimmy Iovine, the famed producer, music mogul, kind of the founder of, Beats by Dre with Dr. Dre, and an incredibly successful guy who knows stars as well as anybody else in Hollywood, and also a guy who used to work with John Lennon back in the day. And so it just kind of hit me. I was like, man, there's one dude in this building, who actually knows what it was like, can really speak to this. So I was going to get Jimmy and just break it down. Like, Jimmy, is this hyperbole? Is LeBron on that level? And so it was going to be, flowery but colorful and very, very different than what it ultimately ended up being, for sure.
It was still flowery and colorful. It just it was a little bit there was a little bit more teeth to it at the end of the day.
Yes.
So where do you stand with this thing? Where do you stand? I don't know where to stand on this Rondo Chris Paul thing, because like I said, I don't. Here's my take with Rondo. Rondo is who he is, okay? He is who he is. He puts it out there, whether you like him or hate him, and a lot of people don't like him, especially those who have coached him, because he's arrogant, right? I mean, he thinks he knows everything. But I will say that a lot of the young guys in Chicago loved him. He sided with them against Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade. And, Chris Paul, it's a totally different deal with him. If you talk to a lot of people that have played with him or know him, the word that you'll hear a lot with his personality is phony. I mean, that's honestly the word I hear more than anything, Sam, with Chris Paul. And again, I've had my issues with him a little bit, and I'm fine. I'm a big boy. I don't care. I don't care if Chris Paul comes at me or Rondo comes at me or whatever, for whatever it is. But I don't know where I stand on this one at the end of the day. And, did Rondo spit? Yeah, he spit. Did he mean to? It looked like he probably meant to. Did it, warrant punches being thrown? I don't know.
I mean, everything you said is on point. Certainly the accusations of Chris being phony are no secret. The second he was gone from Clipper World, that was a loud narrative, and that's been the case even before then. I feel like when it comes to the dissection of the fisticuffs, I'm going to end up yielding and kind of giving the floor to players in general, who across the board, they seem to have this agreed upon mantra that, as PJ Tucker put it to me, that spitting is worse than swinging. Wow. And, I do agree with you that this was not like a monster, not to get all nasty, but like a monster loogie that was flying, it wasn't.
You're right.
This is great that this is actually
this what we're talking about. But, right. I think it's loogie, by the way. I don't know. I think it's pronounced loogie.
Okay, sure. Yeah, potato. I hear you. So, I do agree with you also that I do. My opinion would be that I do think Rondo meant to do it, but then he also, in general, he doesn't have much benefit of the doubt when it comes to things he's willing to do on a basketball floor. So if I'm Chris, it does set me off, and then you smush him with the finger in the face, and then you're off and running. Breaking it down and not necessarily taking all the context into account that you talk about with their reputations. I think Rondo's, the bigger offender in this case, because Chris ends up, his swings at that point are essentially survival.
He's got
you're getting,
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you watched the slow-mo,
yep.
And not to make light of these guys, getting into it, but my God, you can read his lips, and it certainly appears that Chris literally says, "Don't you ever spit in my face." Yep. And the second that the last word's coming out of his mouth, he just gets popped. He can't even finish his sentence, and Rondo's, just nailing him. And it seems like pretty clean contact. And then Chris is, at that point, just swinging back.
Tough.
So,
yeah.
I am well aware, as much as anybody, of how Chris Paul is a master irritant. Maybe, honestly, the best the game has ever seen. He might be the best. He can get away with stuff when the refs aren't looking. He can, even the cross your arms move that preceded all of this, guaranteed that if you're Rondo, you're like, man, this dude, you're going to put your arms up you don't have to fear me at all. You're just going to cross them right in front of me. And I think the other thing he said, it appeared that he looked Rondo dead in the eye and said, "Who are you?" which is, pretty bold. So a lot of layers to it, but, the Rondo thing, I think everybody I talked to was once you spit, like all bets are off.
Yeah, no love lost, certainly between those two. And Chris Paul's got a reputation of, back even in his days at Wake Forest, that I think he punched somebody in the balls. So,
right.
It's one of those things where both of them have their share of detractors, no doubt about it. And I can't wait till they see each other again.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I was going to say real quick before we spin it forward, I'm curious, not to put you on the spot, but did you see the video today of the Rondo's reaction with the media? Did you catch that?
No. How was he?
It was interesting. It was classic Rondo. Like it was a nothing burger. Like there was nothing there. It was edgy. It was certainly not. I think he might have made one comment about I'm not proud of what happened or something of that sort, but he also, Tanya Ganguly of the LA Times had asked him very, simple, clear question about what started it. And it just, he shoots her a glare and says basketball, and then like every question was irritating him. He seemed, and the next thing you know, Brandon Ingram comes out and because, listen, he's a young guy who, he's got a million people in his ear going, Brandon, this is not good for your rep.
Yeah.
And so he comes out and he's contrite, and there was a lot more meaning behind what he said. But, Rondo certainly wasn't coming out trying to fix the PR.
It shocked me, Ingram, by the way. He's about as quiet a kid and mellow, and that real, like the last guy I would picture to throw punches on that entire court was probably Brandon Ingram. So I get it. He sucker punched him. Anybody who wants to say like he deserved more than 4 games, I get it all. Honestly, if I'm Luke Walton, I'm not that upset about Brandon Ingram doing that at the end of the day. I want to see some fight out of Brandon Ingram. It might not have been exactly the fight I would have liked, but again, showing that he's willing to back his team and get in there and scrap it up, I'm okay with that if I'm Luke Walton.
I'm torn because if I'm Luke, and also if I'm LeBron, I had this conversation with someone close to LeBron yesterday. Like, I would love to know, and he would never admit this, but what is his true opinion after all this, the dust kind of settles? Because this might not be fair, but I would almost, if I was him, be blaming Rondo for Ingram. You know what I mean? Like
sure.
It's, Rondo's the one who's sparking this thing and having it go to the next level. And it only took 2 games if you're Brandon Ingram, you have just gone through a training camp and a preseason where LeBron has tried to preach togetherness. They showed that video clip the other day. I think it might have been the opener, whenever it was, of LeBron telling his guys, hey, if you fall down, don't get up. Wait for your teammate to come. I got you. So you're preaching this. Well, if you're Brandon, like one of your main jobs right now is to send the message to the veterans who are leading that you're on board. And what better way to do that than having Rondo's back when, this stuff goes down. But it all starts with Rondo. If I'm LeBron, I'm sitting here going, man, Rajon, we already were up against it in the West. We knew that we're not a title contender. We're trying to make sure we make the playoffs. And next thing you know, now we got Rondo on the shelf for 3 games, Brandon for 4, and kind of a, black eyes of the literal and symbolic kind along the way.
And we got LeBron putting his arm around Chris Paul, which is no surprise. As we know, like, they're boys. I think Chris Paul is LeBron, whatever he would do. What did you think of that, when you saw LeBron kind of trying to talk to Chris instead of going over and making sure his teammate Rondo is under control?
Like you said, no surprise. It's hard for me to be mad at him because you're talking about a guy who's, what is it now, 16 seasons in, in the debate for greatest player of all time, has a whole lot more history with Chris Paul than he does with Rondo.
But that's your teammate. I would not blame Sam, that's your teammate, though. No?
I hear you. I guess I'm just,
you're not
by
surprised.
nature, I'm a realist, so
I'm
not surprised. Like, it's like, are we surprised that there might be an era of LeBron's Lakers tenure in which this might lead to them not being very good, but the culture may very well be that everybody here is lucky to play with LeBron. Like, that's kind of the reality of where they're at. He's making this whole thing go. He chose to go to LA. He chose to play for the Lakers. And the idea that he put some faith in Rondo by, let's not kid ourselves. LeBron has influence on the roster. So the idea that he put faith in Rondo and that 2 games in, you got this kind of disaster, no, I wasn't surprised. I mean, the optics were bad, and I think there's even people who are close to LeBron who care about him deeply who wish he wouldn't have done it, that he took it too far, at least publicly. I was actually, and it was in that story I wrote, like, I went out to the loading dock after the whole thing, and to be honest, I mean, believe me, I just wanted to start writing and then, hit the finish line at some point. But I'm thinking to myself, like,
what am I going to say?
For all I know, it could pop off again at the loading dock, So I go back there and I see Chris sitting on the back of a golf cart with his wife, Jada, and his security is everywhere, and both kinds of security. You got the red jacket Staples Center people, and then you got cops, armed police officers hanging. You got the cars, the nice cars, the loading dock trucks, all the above. Chris is hanging there for about a half an hour, and I don't know why it took so long for him and his group to be on their way and get the car and whatnot. But LeBron ends up circling back with him again out there. So, here comes LeBron.
That's why.
And LeBron and CP
That's
are
why he
chopping
was
it up.
waiting. You know that. He was waiting for LeBron.
Yes, right. I think you're right. And I would assume that, they probably, went out and had a good time somewhere at somebody's house or spent some time together. I mean, that's the thing. It's funny because we write that these guys are friends, and, like, we need a new word for it because it's beyond, like, when LeBron, in years past, like, LeBron would stay at Chris's house in Houston. Like, that's
showed up.
We're
Sam,
talking about.
They showed up when I went to watch LeBron's kid in Vegas for a game just because somebody told me he was playing. And I'm like, I'd rather watch him than some other 17-year-old top 25 player. Guess who walked in with LeBron? Chris Paul.
Right. 100%.
They're boys.
100%. And this is not, we're not going down this road because it's old news at this point, but I'm curious, like, your quick 2 cents on this. So last night in the, I think this is fine to share. I'm in the JW Hotel across from Staples Center, and I ran into CJ Paul, Chris's brother. And I had asked CJ about free agency. And I said, last year the Rockets definitely acted like they thought they had a real crack at LeBron in the summer. And then even in the middle of free agency, like in one form or another, they did not give up on their LeBron pursuit until, it was basically done with the Lakers. Talking to CJ was interesting because he smacked the whole thing down in terms of, like, he honestly acted like Chris and LeBron never spoke about playing together and that it wasn't on the table, which is, like, PR-wise, I don't know, there's no harm in
admitting
in having it out there. So I didn't know how to read that. I thought that was fascinating. The reality is maybe Chris and everybody else just knew that LeBron was hell-bent on being in LA, and that's all there was to it.
And Chris couldn't get there at the end of the day. That's, that was part. I always thought they would end their careers playing together. I really did, but it looks more and more improbable at this point just because Chris is fairly locked into Houston, and being paid quite a bit of money as he ages, gracefully right now. So the Lakers with LeBron, with Lonzo, with all these dudes, Rondo, and there's so many layers. We could go into this for its own podcast. I want to hit some other things as well. What's your take on this Lakers team, and can they be the last team standing playing Golden State in the West, or is that? I think they will be at the end. I think they're going to get off to a poor start and be 10-10, and I think LeBron will figure it out after the All-Star break. They'll go on a run, and as long as they avoid playing, Golden State and they don't want to be in that 4-5 matchup. As long as they get like that, to me, they could even get a 6-7 seed and be fine.
I don't know, man. I'm actually, I would love, we gotta drill that down and you can try to convince me to come to your side a little more because I'm not seeing it. And maybe maybe I'm being a prisoner of the moment, but I was actually just watching The Jump on ESPN and they were breaking down some tape. It was Rachel Nichols and Windhorst and Mark Spears. And so Rachel was making just showing clips from the other night, and there's just no space on the floor. And her point was, this is nothing that we didn't know on July 10th, that this roster was, had showed, zero respect for shooting, guys who can't knock it down. I mean, essentially, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is your best sniper.
Yeah.
And so
Ingram
LeBron's got
should
nowhere
be,
to go.
Sam. Ingram, to me, if left open, Brandon Ingram should be shooting 40% from three at the end of the day, and I think he will. I do. I think Ingram's your best shooter. I think Kuzma was a little bit of an aberration. That's not him last year. I mean, he was never known as a shooter previously, and sometimes, when you get going, it was surprising as a rookie. He got going. He got his confidence up. He's fearless. I like all that, but Kyle Kuzma is a good piece at the end of the day. I think if Lonzo shoots it like he has, I don't know, Lonzo, LeBron, Ingram, I just don't think you can have Rondo on the court. That's the big thing for me is, I always said this, the only reason Rondo was great is because he played with 3 Hall of Famers. It was like the perfect storm in Boston. You can't put him on a team that's not a really good shooting team. You can't. You
sound like Chris Paul out here, man.
Yeah.
That's the way Chris always gets under Rondo's skin from what I hear. That's the whole dynamic with them, is that Chris is jealous of, or it's safe to assume he's jealous of the championship that Rondo won, and he's looking at it like he's the benefactor of that talent. But I hear you on the Rondo concerns, and that's why these next 3 games are so interesting, because 3 games when you're competing for a starting job, I mean, that's an eternity. This is a terrible time for Rondo to be on the sideline, and Lonzo's got a great chance here to do some things and assert himself, and who knows, honestly, maybe kind of change the course of where the roster and the team and the Lakers story is going. Because before the fight happened, I'm standing courtside talking to different shoe industry folks, we'll call them, and it's like, a lot of the chatter was, all right, how long is Lonzo going to be on this roster? And the idea being that, they don't want to, if they're not going to utilize him, he's got decent value around the league potentially, and maybe you mix it up. But these next 3 games, if they get right, if they go in the right direction, if he plays a part in it, that could be huge.
Yeah, I don't know why you trade Lonzo. To me, I think you got to see if this thing works, playing Lonzo and LeBron together. Do you need to add maybe another shooter? Sure. If you can do it. I don't know if you can do it, but I think Ingram, again, playing with LeBron and Lonzo, Brandon Ingram's going to be good. He is. He's going to be good. And Pope's numbers should go up. And Kuzma should get open shots. I mean, everybody's going to get some open looks now with those 2 guys as long as they're able to run. My biggest problem with them is defense. That's my biggest concern with them is who's going to guard on this team right now. Who are the guys? Rondo doesn't want to guard at all anymore. LeBron picks his spots. Lonzo's okay. Ingram's not great. Kuzma's okay. Pope's not great. You bring the guys in off the bench. Beasley doesn't want to guard. Lance doesn't really want to guard. I mean, he'll look the part. So I worry about them defensively. I think they're going to be able to score. And I think people are making a bigger deal about them not being able to shoot the ball than they should. I'm more worried about the defense. But, all right, Denver or New Orleans? Both are 3-0 right now, Sam. Who you buying right now and why?
They both look amazing. If we're going, if I'm buying a superstar, I'm buying AD by a hair over Jokic. But as far as the team, I'm buying the Nuggets. I mean, they look really good. And I was bullish on them going into the year. You know how it is when you're, a reporter and you spend time with a group, you end up kind of being guilty of, once you learn about the operation and some of the personalities and you feel like you understand, how they're wired, how they tick, then, all of a sudden you just look at it differently. So I was in Nuggets training camp in San Diego for a couple days, sat down with Mike Malone, talked to Tim Conley, talked to Jokic a little bit, talked to their guys, Paul Millsap, and they just have a really neat vibe going. And it's carried over to the court in these first couple games. And, they're not going to lead the league in defense, but it's a great sign for them early on. They have the number 1 defensive rating by a long shot right now. And Jokic has shown some improvement, and that's just a huge, huge development for them. And we'll see over the course of 82 if he can keep it up. But, this is a coach in Mike Malone who, defense was his calling card for a long time. When he was with the Warriors, he was the leader of that Mark Jackson defense and in New Orleans after that. So the last couple of years have been fascinating because Mike had done some really quality work with the Nuggets, but it didn't fit with his brand at all. It was, high-octane offense and really bad defense. So they look amazing. And Jokic, he's such an interesting, unique superstar in today's NBA. And, this is going to be the year, I think, where the mainstream fans finally figure out who he is.
Man, he is tremendous. I remember when Ed Pinckney was on their staff, his rookie year. He didn't play much his rookie year. And early on, Pinckney said to me, this kid is going to be special. And I'm just watching him. I remember I was watching him in pregame warm-ups and just trying to sit down. And, Pinckney knows big guys, obviously. And he was right. I mean, this kid, he is. He's one of the top probably, maybe 10 players in the NBA right now, and nobody gives him credit for that at all. Especially all around, versatile bigs that can score, that can really – you can run everything through him if you want. I mean, such a good passing big man. And I think Gary Harris is one of the more underrated guys in the league right now. I mean, I really do. When he signed that deal, I was like, whoa, he just got a ton of money, whatever it was a year or two ago. And now I think, honestly, and in Denver, you have no choice. You got to overpay to keep a guy like that, a young guy. Otherwise, somebody else is going to grab him. He's going to go somewhere else in free agency. But, I thought maybe they overpaid for Gary Harris, but now I think maybe they get a bargain because Gary Harris might be their second best player. Probably is. They need somebody else to step up. I don't know who it is. And Will Barton going down doesn't help. But, it's Jamal Murray up to the – I think both those teams, I look at them and I'm like, who's the number 3 guy for Denver or New Orleans? And please don't tell me it's Mirotic. I know he's been awesome so far, but – are we relying on Mirotic to average whatever 30 or something, 30 and 10, which is what he's doing so far? Hell no.
No, I mean Mirotic he'll level off, and I like his game a lot. He's not going to be at that level. For the Nuggets, I think Jamal is going to take a step forward. If he doesn't, then I almost feel bad for the Nuggets people because if he doesn't, and if they underperform at any point, then the little subplot that's going to get pulled out again that they always hear about is missing on Donovan Mitchell. And, because you sit there and you imagine him in that environment, which is pretty incredible. But Trey Lyles had a good preseason. They feel good about him, and who knows if he could be part of the solution. You got the other situation there, too, with Isaiah Thomas, who is not coming back anytime soon. That hip, unfortunately for him, is just continuing to be a problem. I think we're probably talking about like a 6-week to 2-month stretch until we see Isaiah on the floor. And so, and then what form is he going to be? So you can't count on that. Michael Porter, I think probably not going to play this year. So I don't know who that guy is, but their system is set up in a way offensively that it doesn't necessarily, I think, require that third guy. And the Jokic, he's a league pass alert guy every night of the week, and people need to watch him. Myself included, I want to study what he does more. Like I just read this super interesting piece that Micah Adams wrote about comparing the Nuggets like last year and this year to the Warriors in like 2012-13 and like an unconventional parallel between Jokic and Steph Curry and their impact on the game, Steph back then to Jokic now, combined with a roster where you built out partly through the draft, a big-time free agent. For the Warriors, it was Andre Iguodala. For the Nuggets, it was Paul Millsap. Very similar blueprints to how these teams have been built. His whole premise was the Nuggets might not just be like a sexy little team that we pay attention to for a couple months. They might be a really, really good title contending team eventually. So we'll see where it goes, but I think they're really good.
Quick break from Sam Amick to tell you guys today's show is brought to you by Stamps.com. In today's world, everything is on demand. TV, podcasts, movies, parking, you name it. There's probably an app for it. Now you can get your postage on demand, too, with Stamps.com. Stamps.com operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is available wherever your desk may be. Sometimes life gets in the way of getting to the post office. Let Stamps.com bail you out. Just click print and mail it. Done deal. Stamps.com to me saves me a ton of time because I don't have time to go to the post office. So I can just do it from home, save probably half an hour waiting in line. When they send me new equipment to record with it, I use Stamps.com. They'll even send you a digital scale. That way you can weigh everything you send out, and you can be confident that it's the correct amount of postage every single time. Sign up for Stamps.com today by going to Stamps.com, clicking the microphone at the top of the page. Enter the letters GNP after you click the microphone to receive a 4-week trial, which includes postage and a digital scale. That's a 4-week trial just by going to Stamps.com, clicking the microphone at the top of the page, and using my promo GNP. I'm tired of it. I don't know if you are too, the Jimmy Butler fiasco. It's kind of calmed down a little bit, but do you think, if you're a betting man, are you betting Jimmy Butler stays with Minnesota for the year till the trading deadline? What's your take on that whole situation now? Do you have any info that would give people some insight into where he could end up now? I know the Miami thing was heavy, and now it's kind of appears dead.
I mean, it is dead right now, by all indications. I still feel like the pressure that comes with a season, if I had to pick one side or the other, I'd probably say he gets moved somewhere before the deadline. Because for the T-Wolves, you run into that thing of just losing a guy like that for nothing is tough. And Glenn Taylor, eventually has got to get through to Tom Thibodeau and just, be the owner and realize that you lose an asset for nothing. That's a terrible way to do business. And then on the other side of that, you're just going to have teams like Miami, teams like Houston, who are going to realize that they need a little more. Houston's getting off to a tough start, and now with these suspensions, it's even worse. And so what does that look like down the line if their record, if they're scuffling, and this is a team that in terms of expectations, they are the ones talking about how, we're the number one contender for the crown. I mean, that's how they're talking. So that's a pretty high bar. So maybe it's Houston putting more on the table than they have before. Maybe it's Miami. But, meanwhile, it's so bizarre to see Jimmy just, go out there and do his thing. And they've had good moments and they've had bad moments. But, I don't know if there are two more stubborn people in the entire NBA than Tibbs and Jimmy, and they just happen to be in a staring contest right now.
I'm with you 1,000%. I think Jimmy's number one. I think Jimmy might be the most stubborn individual in the entire NBA.
Right.
So when I'm watching Toronto the other night play Boston, I just forgot how good Kawhi was. I just forgot in the second half. Like, again, because it's been a year since we've seen him, and everybody's talking Giannis is the best player in the East. And I'm watching Kawhi, and I'm like, I get it. Giannis is more physically gifted. We know that. Like, I mean, just the things he can do at his size and everything. But, like, I'll tell you what. Like, I'll take Kawhi. I'll still take Kawhi because he's a killer defensively. I mean, again, he's not near what he's probably going to be once he gets his legs and shakes the rust off. But, man, like, I'll put Kawhi up against Giannis right now on both ends of the court, and it's a flip of the coin for me.
I'm with you for sure. I mean, that's exactly where I'm at. I think people forgot how good Kawhi is. I think his PR is bad, and so that's part of the way people talk about him. Yeah. It's terrible. But when he's healthy and when he's committed and invested, the guy is unbelievable. I mean, he is the only guy who I have in person. I'm trying to think if this is an accurate statement. Like, I mean, LeBron would never admit it, but I mean, we've sat there and watched Kawhi slow down LeBron James on a routine basis when their teams battled in playoff series.
It's amazing.
Like, it's the guy is a problem for LeBron. What else do you need to know? He could not score a bucket and just go Andre Robertson style in terms of how he was as a player, and he would be incredibly valuable. And then it's, oh, by the way, I mean, he definitely can average 30 in this league. That's something he can accomplish. The other night, that dunk he had, it was funny because Bernie Lee, the agent for Jimmy Butler, had tweeted a video of Kawhi's dunk where, I don't know if you saw this, where on the way down, the ball comes through the net, and it kind of bounces off Kawhi's leg,
Yep.
and he just grabs it like it's an apple or an orange.
It's crazy.
And it's in midair. Yeah, like his hands are just absolutely monstrous. But this is not just a novelty where we all say, oh, those hands are crazy. No, that helps in basketball. The guy does things, and maximizes his God-given kind of physique and abilities in a way that's incredible. So I think Toronto's going to be really good. And I don't know Kyle Lowry that well, and I haven't talked to him in depth since the trade. So that's the big blind spot for me is where's Kyle at, and if he's going to just kind of shift gears here.
He's making a lot of money, Sam. I think Kyle's fine. I think Kyle's just fine, right?
That's what I mean. So, like, although, I keep going back to different social media videos, but, there was the other video Kyle during pregame went and mimicked the handshake that he used to have with DeMar DeRozan, but he mimicked it by himself and with nobody there. It was a little sad face that I saw somebody put on Twitter. So he's still missing his guy. But basketball-wise, I think Toronto could be really good.
I got a great Kawhi story. You may have heard it. I just was told it this past week by Brian Dutcher, who is now the head coach at San Diego State, was the assistant when he was there. And I was asking him for kind of, just give me some insight into Kawhi. And I've known Kawhi since he was a sophomore at San Diego State. And he said, as a freshman one day, they came in and their arena wasn't one that you could just come in at any point and the lights were on or anything like that. The lights were usually off at night, and the Vieja Center. And they came in one night, or custodian came in or something, late at night. The lights are off, and Kawhi had brought in like a light from his dorm room, one of the little lights, plugged it in to get a little bit of light, and was shooting for hours.
Oh, wow.
And that just sums up the dude. Yeah, it just sums him up. He's a different dude that, again, people forget, like you said earlier, like his PR was so bad last year. And when you had guys on the Spurs.
It still is.
Yeah, when you had guys on the Spurs calling him out, and that was the hardest part. Yeah. Like, nobody had ever thought anybody would ever take a shot about Kawhi and how hard he played or his commitment to winning. And we all started to worry about that. And when you're worried about that with the physical issues, everybody's like, all right, well, you know what? Maybe Kawhi is not going to be a top 10 player anymore. Well, again, I'll say, like, Toronto to me, clearly for me ahead of Philly right now. Clearly.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
Where I wouldn't have said that.
I almost, like, I've interacted with Kawhi enough that, I like him. He's always been good to me. I enjoy him. It kind of kills me that his PR is so bad. And like that story you just told, and I'm not trying to put my marketing hat on. Well, guess what? That story you just told could be a commercial.
Yeah.
Like that could be your brand.
Yep.
That could be the way that you are known. Instead, and I don't want to go too far in the weeds on this. Like, I had a weird thing 2 summers ago with an interview the NBA was kind of putting out there where Kawhi went to China, and it was full disclosure, it was going to be a puff piece.
Yep.
Super positive, just Kawhi in China. And it was a nightmare, like, to get through the different hoops. And we ended up not even running the story because, the group around him is so controlling. And, honestly, I know that it's family, so they have his best of intentions, but it's not working well.
No.
And, one thing, the longer I cover this league, that, if I ever shifted gears and was a consultant of some kind, it would be telling people all around the league, the players, agents, family, like, I know you're feeling yourself right now and you're enjoying the moment. Like, it flies by, man. Like, this stuff, Kawhi's going to be out the league before you know it. And I mean that to say that, like, every year that goes by where guys don't really just kind of strategically make the most of the opportunity, it's unfortunate. It shouldn't be that way. But Kawhi should, be on a platform where the fans truly understand how great he is. And, we'll see if we can get back to that.
The most surprising thing that happened in the first week of the NBA season for me might have been Markelle Fultz hitting a three. What was it for you? It really might have been, just because, again, I didn't think he'd take a three. Like, I thought there was no chance the dude would even take a three-pointer, until maybe, like, mop-up time. end of a game or end of a shot clock where he's got the ball and he just, throws it up there. Maybe it goes in, but it looked all right. And I'll tell you what, and Barkley said it, and I'll say it too. I was really, really, really happy for the kid. I was. I mean, he's been through a lot. Yeah, he's just been, I don't know him super well, but I know him well enough. And like, you go number one overall, and you gotta deal with what you dealt with last year. And we don't know what it was exactly. He told me in the preseason that it was the injury and nothing more than that started everything. Not that they changed the shot for any other reason. It wasn't, his guy changing his shot or somebody from the Sixers changing his shot. But again, it had to be hard. I mean, he's watching Jason Tatum and the world fall in love with Jason Tatum in the playoffs, and he can't even really play.
Right, for sure. So before I come up with one, this is my stall tactic, but this was not the surprising, but this is the exact opposite of Markelle.
Okay.
Hitting the three. One of my early favorite moments was the clip of, I was at the game. I didn't see it happen in real time, but the clip of Lance Stevenson in the right corner, like right wing, I think, firing the three, doing essentially like the Steph Curry celebration, but he goes full 360 and, says something, I think, to his own bench, and then just dances down on the other side, and that ball just careens off the left side of the rim. It was golden. It was like Lance at his best.
So Lance.
It was so Lance. I mean, it's hard for me to pick anything other than, like, hey, by the way, Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo just went straight UFC.
Yep.
Like, that's – and here's the thing, and it's funny, Jeff, I'm going to – if I can find the time, I might write like a little notebook in the next couple of days with more tidbits from that night and different things. But okay, like it would have been one thing if the fight alone was insane. So, but then you got Floyd Mayweather sitting courtside, literally like sitting there like he's the commentator giving his opinion in real time. Chris comes over and Chris is taking control of the narrative right away because he's telling ESPN that he got spit on. Yep. He's telling Floyd that he got spit on all over the place. So, but you got one of the best boxers of all time watching a basketball boxing match. Then, oh, by the way, here comes Meta World Peace, the most infamous brawler in the history of the NBA. And Meta's sitting there, and he pops by press row, and he's cracking jokes about, hey, why are you guys starting trouble over here? So as if that wasn't enough, the game comes to an end, and I'm still just looking for people to talk to. And I look up in the stands. This is 20 minutes after the game's over. And none other than Charles Oakley is still just chilling, like sitting in his seat.
Couldn't have been easier to write this, right?
Oh, my God. Yeah, and I don't know him at all, so I'm looking at him, and full disclosure, because, listen, if I wasn't on the clock and I went to a game to have a good time, I'd probably have a couple beers myself. So my first thing was I look at Oak, and I'm like, all right, if he's feeling good, I'll probably leave him alone. I don't, he's just trying to have a good time. He seemed lucid, seemed great. So I get him, and he gave me a hell of a kicker for the end of my story where I had asked him if he thought the NBA was going to come down hard on these guys. And he goes, man, they ain't going to do nothing. It's a soft league. Everybody's soft. The whole thing is soft.
Oaks, listen, I'll give you a quick one. I'll give you a quick one before we wrap on Oaks. So I didn't know him well either. And a buddy of us a year ago, actually, I'm watching the Celtics opener from a bar in New York. I couldn't go to the game in Cleveland, and Gordon Hayward goes down with the injury. And I'm watching it with Oak and another one of our mutual friends. And Oak had come from the Yankees playoff game. So he had a few. And then we went out after that.
Yep.
We went out to a kind of a loudish bars, place. And, man, deciphering what he's saying is not easy after he's had a few. I probably caught one out of every 3 or 4 words. But, man, the stories he was telling, that the other guy that I was with could confirm were awesome. Like one of them was in Vegas, and actually I was just out in Vegas, and the Cosmopolitan, the dealers, they all have a story on Oak. Every one of them has a story on Oak, and it's not good. It's never good.
Right.
But the story I got was something like he got kicked out of a casino or something, and then he went upstairs, got out of the elevator. there were like 6 or 8 security guys waiting for him off the elevator, and he literally took care of like 6 or 8 of them. He took care of all of them and broke his hand, I think, in the process. They took him to jail, broke his hand. He came out of jail and went out the rest of the night. I mean, just an animal. And, like, again, it was all verified.
Of course he did.
Yeah, it's all.
Well, here's you're helping me connect dots here, because the other funny part of our conversation, I got him to weigh in on spitting, right?
Yeah.
And, I kind of forgot how much or how often Oak had gotten into it with anybody and everybody.
Everybody.
And the best part was, you don't see his quote about spitting in the story, because the reality is that, like, I did not see his reaction coming. And his reaction was essentially that he brought up the situation at the Garden where he got thrown out and it got kind of physical. And he's like, nah, man. He's like, he basically said that whenever somebody wants to justify, getting in a fight, they just say you spit on them. And so he went down that road. Like, I don't know, like, spit happens. Was his stance.
Spit happens.
So he's one of a kind, but it's wild, man. There's even more. Like, I might mention this in the column. There's a video that I didn't see for the first time until today. The lead singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, one of my favorite bands growing up, yeah. Anthony Kiedis, was sitting courtside at that game. And, I mean, he is going full F-bomb middle finger to the Rockets and to Chris Paul as he leaves the floor. And he gets booted. He gets booted by security. And this is not in the video, but apparently was back in his seat like 3 minutes later. Like, these are the Staples Center celebrity rules. So you're not throwing Anthony Kiedis out. But, I mean, just all the cast of characters around that fight were unbelievable.
I mean, think about it. Like you really, in a way, I'm sure, are thinking as that game happens and everything ties itself up, you're thinking, like, shouldn't I just move from the Bay Area down to L.A. and just cover the Lakers? I mean, seriously, like LeVar hasn't even gotten involved. We haven't heard from really Lance yet. Like, I mean, we said this was going to be a reality show, and it took the first week for the first, absolutely cluster, what, to happen. I mean, if Lonzo doesn't play well, we know his daddy's going to get involved somehow. And I mean, I don't know. It's just, listen, to me, I would rent a place down in LA. If I were single, I would absolutely just have moved out to LA and just said, actually, if my daughter weren't a freshman in high school, if she were younger, I probably still would have been like, all right, let's go. Let's just go out to LA for the year.
I mean, right. You're hitting the nail on the head. As you know, I mean, I got a family. I got my wife and 2 boys. And so the NorCal thing works for us, but I'm going to be in LA a lot. And I joked with Brent Barry when I saw him recently in San Antonio. He's got a really nice spot in Manhattan Beach, but because he took this gig with the Spurs, it doesn't get occupied all that much. I was like, all right, man, we need to work something out here. Maybe I can rent out a room. So, I mean, it's funny because I've been down here since Thursday. I'm going to leave tomorrow. And you thought that that's a pretty good stretch where I'd be ready to go home. And I'd be lying to you if, like, I didn't admit that professionally, only the work side, I'm already like, oh, man, I'm leaving tomorrow. Right. Like, something's going to happen the second I leave. And it's going to be that way all year.
Well, listen, we appreciate you coming on. Great to have you on. Congrats on the new gig again. And it is great to see kind of more of the writer in you. No disrespect to what you were doing before at USA Today. You were doing a great job, but you certainly got a lot more room to write and a lot more freedom to be able to tell stories and love that. Appreciate you coming on with great stories, great insight. And again, we'll have you on again as long as you're up to it.
Absolutely, Jeff. Thank you, man. And congrats to you as well. Enjoying your stuff. I saw the Sixers interviews. They were fantastic, and it's fun to see you do your thing. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, man. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again to this week's guest, Sam Amick from The Athletic, formerly of the USA Today. Terrific follow. You want to follow him on Twitter. You want to read his stuff at The Athletic. And thanks for joining us for another edition of Good and Plenty Podcast. Every Tuesday, remember the NBA edition. Every Thursday, the College Hoops edition. The only place you'll be able to follow all of basketball from every level is Good and Plenty. Remember, subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, CLNS Media. You can follow me at Goodman Hoops on Twitter. You can also follow me at Stadium, watchstadium.com. We'll definitely take any recommendations, reviews you have. We could certainly use those to get this thing even better than it's been. And again, please join us next week for another edition, NBA edition for Good and Plenty.